Hello, let's read an article together. So this article about the worldwide prevalence of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Is it an American condition? Published in 2003, 15 years ago. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a behavioral disorder that affects up to 1 in 20 children in the USA. The predominance of American research into this disorder over the past 40 years has led to the impression that ADHD is largely an American disorder and is much less prevalent elsewhere. This impression was reinforced by the perception that ADHD may stem from social and cultural factors that are most common in American society. However, another school of thought suggested that ADHD is a behavioral disorder common to children of many different races and societies worldwide, but that is not recognized by the medical community, perhaps due to confusion regarding its diagnosis or misconceptions regarding its adverse impact on children, their families, and society as a whole. In this article we present the available data. So by the way, these are the writers. The person is very popular, Harvard Institute of Psychiatric Epidemiology and Genetics. Was the first writer of the article. A total of 50 studies were identified from a Medline search for the terms ADHD, attention deficit disorder, hyperkinetic disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and prevalence combined. For the years 1982 to 2001, 20 were studies in US populations and 30 were in non-US populations. Analysis of these studies suggests that the prevalence of ADHD is at least as high in many non-US children as in US children, with the highest prevalence rates being seen when using DSM-4 diagnosis. Recognition that ADHD is not purely an American disorder and that the prevalence of this behavioral disorder in many countries is in the same range as that in the USA will have important implications for the psychiatric care of children. ADHD is a behavioral disorder believed to affect up to 1 in 20 children in the USA. It is characterized by symptoms of inattention and/or impulsivity and hyperactivity, which can significantly impact on many aspects of behavior and performance, both at school and at home. In approximately 18% of children with ADHD symptoms persist into adolescence and may even continue into adulthood. The effects of ADHD significantly impact on the individual throughout childhood and well into adult life, especially if not managed optimally. People with ADHD tend to have a lower occupational status, poor social relationship, and are more likely to commit motoring offenses and develop substance abuse. Parents and siblings also suffer as a result of behavioral problems associated with ADHD. Increased levels of stress are common, as are depression and marital discord. ADHD has been extensively studied in the US over the past 40 years, and this has led to our detailed understanding of the behavioral characteristics of the condition as it is now defined by the American Psychiatric Association, DSM. However, this predominance of American research in this field and apparent differences in the prevalence of ADHD or hyperkinesis as defined by the World Health Organization, ICD, has also led to the impression that this is largely an American disorder and is much less prevalent elsewhere. For example, as pointed out by Taylor and Sandberg, data from studies in the late 1970s give a 20-fold greater prevalence of childhood hyperactivity in North America compared with England. Taylor addressed this issue in a comparison of factor analysis for 7 different studies of children from the US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. He found that in all studies description of being restless and distractible formed a coherent factor corresponding to hyperactivity, which was distinct from antisocial behaviors such as defiance and aggressiveness. When the scores on this hyperactivity factor were compared from the different studies, they were found to be similar across the 7 studies. Taylor thus suggested that the prevalence of such hyperactive behavior is probably similar across these different countries, and that the apparent 20-fold difference in the prevalence of hyperactivity reflects differences in the definition of the condition rather than real differences in behavior between British and American children. For example, children with hyperactive behavior may be more likely to be diagnosed as having conduct disorder in the UK and ADHD in the USA. This lack of a true difference in behavior between American and British children was further confirmed in a Scottish study of children referred to as Scottish Child Guidance Service and a group of controlled children. All children were scored for hyperactivity using the Connors 1969 Teachers Rating Scale as used in the US. 4.5 of the controls were scored as hyperactive. This figure is similar to the prevalence of hyperactivity in the USA of 3.5% from studies using similar definition of the referred children. 42% were scored as hyperactive. This is comparable to percentage 30–40% of children referred to child guidance clinics in the USA who are diagnosed as hyperactive. This data thus also suggests that apparent differences in the prevalence of ADHD reflects differences in diagnostic practice rather than true differences in behavior. However, the question still remains whether ADHD is largely an American disorder, perhaps stemming from social and cultural factors which are common in American society. Okay, let's come to conclusion. We don't have much time, and this article goes. I'm curious. So, ADHD is accepted by all countries or all institutions as a disorder, not just American disorder, but it is good to see that the development of how that disorder perceived by physicians in 2003. The results of studies using DSM criteria suggest that the prevalence of ADHD is at least as high in many non-US children as in US children. Certain populations may have a lower prevalence of ADHD symptoms, but this cannot be concluded on the basis of the available data. Direct comparisons between different populations are required to truly assess the relative prevalence of ADHD symptoms in different cultures and countries. In conclusion, the data from studies using DSM criteria to assess the prevalence of ADHD in representative child and adolescent populations suggests that there is no convincing difference between the prevalence of this disorder in the USA and most other countries or cultures. It's difficult to make exact comparisons between countries because the estimated prevalence is highly influenced by means of assessment and the type of sample recruited. However, the range of prevalence rates for DSM symptoms reported in US child populations appears to fall within those reported for non-US child populations. Okay, that is the end of the video. Have a nice day.